Okay. No, I need to. I was just.
Today we're going to start on Samach Dalet Amud Beis. That is 64B. 64B. Yeah. Okay. At the Mishnah. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this course of our learning, we should have the basic English. It should be safe in Eretz Yisrael. It's cold in Florida.
Yeah.
What's the temperature? 60?
It's 59, 60.
Okay.
Alexa. No.
Okay, so the Mishnah says like this. Makadesh es bitay stam. Talking about a guy that he marries off his daughter to someone. Only problem is he didn't say which daughter. So, Eina Beigers Bechlal. He has girls that are over 12. They're already considered, over 12 and a half. They're considered a Beigers, and he has no rights over them. So when he married off his daughter, obviously he didn't marry off the ones that he has no rights to marry them off. Okay, that's the beginning of the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah goes into something else. Someone has two sets of daughters from two different wives. Now, Rashi says that the first one died and then he married the second one. I'm not sure why Rashi has to say that. We have some comments over there. But anyway, he has two sets of daughters. And he says, I know that I married off my older daughter to someone, to whoever it is. Yeah. Remember the new Coke, which is now the old Coke. There was that advertisement because Coke changed their recipes. They called it the new Coke, but then no one liked it, so they switched it back. So,
want to know what really happened?
So they said they had this advertisement. This guy comes in and he says, "Can I have a Coke?" So the guy says, "Do you want the new Coke, which is now the old Coke, or the old Coke, which is now the new Coke?" So he says, "Just give me a Pepsi." anyway, what happened over here is there's two groups of daughters. So he says, I married off my oldest daughter. So he doesn't know, but he doesn't know, is it the oldest of the oldest? Or is it the youngest of the oldest, which is older than the oldest of the youngest? It's still bigger, right? Daila is still bigger. Or maybe it's the oldest of the youngest group. So, Kula Nasir's Chusman Aktanis Shabaktanis. Reb Meir suspects to all of those possibilities. They're all considered older, right? They're all considered older than someone.
Married them.
He doesn't. No, we're not saying older than 12 and a half. They're all under 12 and a half. Question is, which one it is? They're all under. He's calling them older not because they're older. He's calling them older because, like my kids say, I'm older than them. You know. Yeah, it's two sets of wives. Two families. Right? So, different mayor. Rabbi Yossi says no. There's only one oldest daughter. He thinks that it means the oldest. What's that called in grammar? Oldest versus older. What is that called?
Absolute. Oldest of the older ones.
Yeah, but in the grammar there's a term. What is that term when you say
superlative?
What is it called?
Superlative?
Superlative means the oldest. Yeah, or does that mean just older? So I think the word is superlative. So that's Rabbi Yossi says that it's Gedola would just mean the superlative, just the oldest. Reb Meir says no, it's anyone that's older. Okay. The Gemara goes on, the Mishnah goes on and does the same thing, just with exactly the opposite. And of course, the Gemara is going to ask whether we need both cases. It's exactly the same. Let's see. He says, "Kidashti espiti aktana ve'eni yedem ktana shebektana shektana shebegdolos shebektana shektana men aktana shebegdolos." He says, "I married off my younger daughter, but I don't know if it's the youngest or the youngest of the youngest of the oldest group, or if it's the oldest of the youngest group, which is younger than the youngest of the older group, right?" So according to Reb Meir, Kulan Asurus Chutz min Agdil Shebegdolos, they're all Asur except for the very oldest, very eldest,
younger than anyone else,
right? So, and that's Reb Meir's view. And Rabbi Yossi says, he says, no, only the very youngest is the one that's going to be married. Okay. Now the Gemara jumps back to the first case of the Mishnah. And the Gemara says the first case of the Mishnah was if he marries off his daughter and he doesn't specify which daughter, right? So we said, what was the halacha there?
What's the chiddush of the first statement of the Mishnah? Why would they even have to write it?
The first Bite Stam?
Yeah, Ena Burgers Bechlal. It's obvious that a man can't Mekadosh.
Yes, very good. Very good. Very good. I don't want to give away the Gemara. The Gemara is going to discuss it now. Spoiler alert. The Gemara is going to discuss. It's a very good question. The Gemara says, "Ha ketanais bechlal." When you said that you didn't marry off the anyone that's older 12 and a half, that's obvious. Like Chaim's asking, it's obvious. He has no rights over her, so of course he can't marry her. So the Gemara says, but what implies from that? That all the younger ones are yes implied, right? All the younger ones are yes are implied. Now, you see the difference between this case, this very first case, and the other case of the Mishnah. The other case of the Mishnah is he married his daughter off, one specific daughter off to this fellow, good guy, wanted him as a son-in-law. He just didn't know which daughter he married, but it was really one specific daughter. In the very first case of the Mishnah, he didn't even specify which daughter. He married a daughter, one of his daughters, but he didn't specify which one. So another one he specified, he just forgot. The first one he didn't specify. So, but we see from that haktanais bechlal. But that would mean that he is married to the younger one, one of the younger ones. The problem is shamet mina. We learn from this Kiddushin shein Mesirin Labia have a Kiddushin. We had a machlekes back on Daf Aleph between Abaye and Rava. But if a man is married to one of these sisters, but he doesn't know which one, but he marries one of the sisters, he says they accept Kiddushin on behalf of each other or whatever. So that's a Kiddushin, that's a betrothal that could never be consummated, because he can't marry, because he doesn't know which sister it is. So he's never, and he can't marry one of them because it could be he was married to the other one. You can't marry a sister of your wife. So a marriage that can never be consummated, according to Abaye, is not, according to Rava, is not a Kiddushin. According to Rava, it's not a Kiddushin.
Aren't both of them divorced? And then one of those remarried in case you don't know which houses?
That was when they weren't sisters. But if they're sisters, then it's a problem. So, but we're seeing from this, the chiddush over here would be that even though this is a marriage that could never be consummated, if there's more than two younger girls. You see, let's say there's a family of three. One of them is 12 and a half, and one is other one is 12 and 11. All right. So the father accepts Kiddushin on behalf of his daughters. Okay, so the 12 and a half one is out, but the other two are considered married. And it's a kasha on Rava, because according to Rava, that should not even be even a marriage at all. He says Kiddushin she'eina Mesirin Labia is not a marriage. It's nothing. Should be nothing. So the Gemara answers, the Gemara answers this question. It says, you know what? There's actually only two girls here. There's only one older one and one younger one. Now Chaim's question comes in. It says, so of course this is obvious. But the Gemara first says, how could you say that? It says Vaha Baigris Ktani. But it says that there's Baigris, which means that there are that's a plural. That means there's many girls that are over 12 and a half. Gemara says, no, my Baigris to Alma. That means that if there were a bunch of fathers that accepted Kiddushin on behalf of their daughter, their individual daughter, that only the younger one would be married. It's not talking about that this father had a bunch of older daughters, and therefore corresponding to that would be a bunch of younger daughters. That's what it would mean automatically. It's not what I'm talking about. It's talking about that this father only had one older daughter and one younger daughter. And so therefore the younger one is married. And I said that there were the older ones are not ones are not married. So that's talking about because many fathers would have the same scenario, the same thing would apply. That's, the plural is not in this family, the plural is if there were many families like that. Gemara says, Pshita, Baigris Ma'avidatayah, isn't that obvious? What's the Chiddush over here? What's the Chiddush that the older one isn't married? Father has no rights over her. Marianne says, and the Shavisi Shliach. We're talking about, you're right, the father has no rights over her, but she appointed the father to be a messenger to accept Kiddushin on her behalf. She stays home. She says, Dad, if you meet someone nice, will you accept Kiddushin for me? So so it could be that really he has two options now. He has to marry off his younger daughter, and he also can be marrying off his older daughter, not as a father, but as a shliach. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us, if he marries off his younger daughter, who keeps the money? The father. If he marries off his older daughter, he's just a messenger to bring the ring back to her. So Kamash Malan, the Mishnah comes to teach us that he only married off the younger daughter because he would only do something that he would gain from, not something that he won't gain from. The Gemara says
that seems very counterintuitive.
Right. All right, hold on, we'll see in a moment then. Okay, so 1 second. Gemara says, Mila Yaskina, I'm sorry, you were saying something?
If the father's a shliach, that could only be for the rus. Yeah. It can't be for a get, right?
The father could accept the get as well for as a shliach le Kabbalah, right? He could accept the get for it. Yeah, it's a regular shliach. Points a shliach. So the Gemara says, Mila Yaskinan Damri Lei. Are we not dealing with where she told him, Kedusha Lach, and you can keep the money? So he's going to keep the money either way, whether he's marrying off his older daughter or his younger daughter. So if that's the case, then how do you know maybe Taka is a shliach for the, maybe he didn't marry off the older one. Where it says, Afilu hachi shavik inish mitzvah de rami alei, bavid mitzvah de rami alei. Person would rather take care of his obligation before he takes care of something that's just like voluntary or just a favor for someone. When he marries off his younger daughter, he's fulfilling the mitzvah of marrying off his younger daughter. Marrying off his daughter. Is that a mitzvah to marry off your daughter? Sounds like it's a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? What's the mitzvah to marry off your daughter? Oh yeah. It says in the prophets. Okay. Mitzvah betrothing a begeris, however, is not incumbent specifically on the father for the third. Does not give him authority to transact their betrothal. Huh. Such a minor difference.
What did it say? I didn't understand you.
In Jeremiah, it says it says that your daughters you give to men, you marry off your daughters. So there's like a mitzvah from the prophets to marry off your daughters. Since that mitzvah can only be for a father that's marrying off his younger daughter that he's able to perform that mitzvah. So that's where the mitzvah would apply. His older daughter is not incumbent upon him to do that.
When we went through the list of the 5 obligations of the father for a son, it was one of the 5, right?
Marry off his son to.
Yeah, one of the 5.
1 second. 1 second. You're talking about in Kiddushin Daf Yomi, right?
Yes.
One of them is Lasi is for his son. To marry off his son. It doesn't say to marry off his daughter. His son has to get married because his son has a mitzvah of Pururavu. His daughter doesn't have a mitzvah of Pururavu. Right? It can be what's it called? An old maid.
Right here.
Oh yeah, that's gifting. That says Gemilas Chasadim. Right.
In the Quran, it says go ahead.
Right. I'm sorry. In the Quran, it says what?
In the Quran, it says he did not create a waste, right? I guess that's the same thing for non-Jews. Like there's a law that the world wasn't created for tow or something like that.
So that mitzvah is not performed when he does it, when he marries off his older daughter. Maybe it's not incumbent upon him. Maybe that's what it means. It's not incumbent upon him. And therefore, the mitzvah, the Rami, a mitzvah that's like placed on him is what he's going to want to do first. Once again.
The mitzvah's only for daughters under bas mitzvah?
No.
For the father. Well,
Mitzvah that the father is able to perform is for his daughters on the bas mitzvah. Okay. Okay, I guess afterwards it becomes a mitzvah on everyone. It's not specifically the father.
when she's older, it's on her. Yeah,
It's
when
on
she's
her.
Younger, it's on
Right. Okay. Mishiyesh la shtei kite banis. Someone that has 2 sets of daughters. We're re-quoting the Mishnah. We're going to analyze the Mishnah. We had 2 cases in the Mishnah. One case was where he says, I married off my older daughter. That's the first case. And then he didn't know which older daughter he meant. And then the second case was married off his younger daughter, and he didn't know which younger daughter he meant, right? And both of them was the same machlekes, Rabbi Yossi and Reb Meir. So the Gemara says like this: Tzricha. We need both cases. The Ashmin and Kamaisif would only say the case about the older daughter. Reb Meir, regarding that, Reb Meir says that they're all considered older daughters. Why? The Kimendikas of since there are younger than her, so lahach gedei, because since that's considered an honor title to say my older daughter, so older. As long as there's one that's younger, he's always going to call them all older. That's a nicer way of. Today, I would say it's the opposite. Women like to be called young, but I don't. Maybe in young girls, not like that, because we're talking about little girls, little kids.
Yeah. Can't wait for the.
Oh, the little kids are always like, I'm older than you.
Shalom, look 18.
You feel good.
No, they want to be older than someone else. It doesn't matter the age. So I'm older, right? So he wants to say it's considered nice to say about, oh, this is the older one, this is the older one, this is the older. Why? Because there's one that's younger. They're all considered older. When it comes to say the younger, he would only say it about the very youngest. He wouldn't say it about the. Maybe because the older daughters are more helpful in the house. They're more and they're more capable. Like they raise the children. The older daughters, like I'm like half a mother.
Difficult world. The young people want to be old, and the old people want to be young.
Right. So, but he wouldn't have said. But maybe we would think Reb Meir would say that he would agree to Rabbi Yossi that he's only referring to the very youngest. And if you would say only the story he said he married off his younger daughter, that's where Rabbi Yossi says that it's only the very young, the youngest. But by the case where he says my older daughter, he married off, maybe he would say that they're all considered older. Anyone that's older than someone. So tzricha. Necessary. Okay, now the Gemara asks, "Lemeimer de Rav Meir savar machasin es nafshei l'sveika, v'Rav Yossi savar lemachasin es nafshei l'sveika." Are you telling me that the Meir says that a father would put himself into a doubt to say something ambiguous, to use an ambiguous term, and that Rav Yossi says that the father would not do that? When he says older, he means the oldest, according to Rav Yossi. According to Rav Meir, he says the older, it means older than anything. As long as it's older than something, right? According to Rav, and makes it a suffix. Yeah, are you saying that that's their opinions? That Rav Meir says a person is not careful to say something exact, and Rav Yossi says that the person is careful to say something exact? But we have exactly the opposite opinion, where Rav Yossi says that a person is not careful, and Rav Meir says that a person is careful to be exact, be precise. The Tanan, we have a Mishnah in the Darim. It says, "Hanoider ada Pesach." If someone says, "I'm not going to do such and such," the classic neder is, "I'm going to quit smoking." Going to quit, right? Although I quit last year, we'll quit again this year. So, someone takes a vow until Pesach. He's asur ad sheyagia. He's asur until Pesach, which is until Pesach starts. That was his vow. Let's say he says ad sheyahi Pesach, not until Pesach reaches, but he says until it is Pesach. So then he's going to be asur until asur ad sheyetze, because it still is Pesach. He really has to, Pesach has to finish for the vow to be completed. Ad Panei Pesach. Let's say he says, "I'm taking a vow until before Pesach." Yeah. The Ad Sheyahi Pesach is just the fact that he added in an extra word, so we think that maybe he's coming to include Pesach itself. But if he says until before Pesach, Panei means before. That's what we think right now. Until before Pesach. So, Rav Meir Aimer Asher Ad Sheyagia. Once Pesach starts, it's not before Pesach anymore. However, Rav Yossi Aimer Ad Sheyetze, Rav Yossi says, no, it still is before Pesach, even when Pesach starts, because it's before the last day of Pesach. And even on the last day, it's still before the end of Pesach. It's all before. So
If it's the first day of Pesach, and you go up to somebody and say, "It's Pesach, isn't that great?" You wouldn't say it's not Pesach
He
until
would
the
say,
end of the.
he would say, it's not over yet. It's not over. So he says till before Pesach. So what we're seeing over here, the Gemara's question is that in our Mishnah, it says that when he says something that could mean more than just one thing, whose opinion was that? That was just Rav Meir. Rav Yossi says, no, you don't. You define it to mean that it's only the very oldest or only the very youngest. And before Pesach, we would have thought Rav Yossi's opinion would be until before Pesach, not every day. You see, every day of Pesach is comparable to every girl that's older. It's before something. It's older than something. It's before the last day. So the same thing with the girls. She's older than the youngest. So
Does Hebrew like not have superlatives? I'm sure.
there is in
Separate
Hebrew
words,
to do a superlative, you say Hagedola.
Rav Meir and Rav Yossi are really arguing the intent of the person of what he meant. So if the person meant to make Pesach, which is before Pesach, then it should be according both to you.
Right. Right. So what they're arguing is, does a person say something that's vague, or what he says, do we translate it to mean exactly the most of that? That's what they're arguing about. What's the person? Yeah. So the problem is that when it comes to the marrying off his oldest daughter, Reb Meir was the one that says that he means all of it. Could mean all of the ones that are older because he's not so careful. And when it comes to Pesach, he says that it only means until before Pesach. These very kids only. He said before Pesach it means only till Erev Pesach.
So I mean, this is all
the contradiction.
This is all if he doesn't remember.
Yeah.
Technically, they could all marry like one guy, right?
No,
They're all from different wives.
No, they have the same father.
Both different mothers.
Yeah, they have the same father. If it would be, a man can marry a bunch of women, but not if they're sisters. And here they're sisters. They're the
half sisters, depending on if it's maternal.
Yeah, but the sisters from the father is for sure sisters. Sisters from the mother is also sisters, but
In this case, if he does remember.
if he remembers, Yeah, the problem
Even if
is,
it's at nay,
yeah, I'm not sure if you go and ask him what did you mean, if that would change the story.
I mean, you're trying to compare it to
Yeah,
the
which
others.
you're comparing the two. Before, in the case with the
Didn't
girls,
remember.
he doesn't remember. Over here,
Doesn't say that.
it doesn't say he remembers. It doesn't remember. We're looking at the lashon of the nether. What we just look at the lashon of the other. What does it mean? I think so. So we have a contradiction here. Well, Amar Rabbi Chanina bar Abdimi, Amar Rav, Machlefes Hashita. Switch the names around. Oh boy. Easy answer. We mixed it up. What we said was Reb Meir, it was really Reb Yossi. When we said Reb Yossi, it was really Reb Meir. V'hatanya, we even have a brisa that supports that. V'hatanya here means is Bini Chusa.
Oh, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Rashi spells out whenever V'hatanya is Bini Chusa.
Yeah.
V'hatanya in general, if you're used to learning Gemara, V'hatanya is always, how could you say that? But we have a brisa that says differently. But every once in a while, V'hatanya means, and this brisa proves what we're saying. It's not, instead of being a question, it's a proof.
Oh.
So Rashi always writes Bini Chusa to do that. Bini Chusa means that it's said in not in question form. What's the word for that? To support. I'm sorry? To support, right. But the explanation for this is because the word vaha has two meanings. It could mean but and it could mean this. Vaha. Vaha could mean this. And this price proves it. Okay. Or it could mean but it says them. And this price proves it of Zeha Klal, this is the rule. Kol Shazmani Kavua, anything that has a set time, which is, for example, Pesach, Bamarad Pinei. And he said until before. Rameir says that means until it finishes, which is exactly the opinion of Rameir in our Mishnah, which means that every single day of Pesach is before the last day of Pesach, which is every single girl is a little older than the one that's younger. Okay. And Rabbi Yossi says until it comes. When it says anything Shazmani Kavua, yeah, this proves that that's actually Reb Meir's opinion. It's opposed to the summer or the winter. He says until the summer, until the winter. Then he doesn't mean every day until then. He means only until the very beginning of it.
Like
but
today's the beginning.
is it actually the beginning?
No, I'm just.
So yeah. So but when in Pesach we see clearly their opinions match with our Mishnah. Amar Abaya. Abaya says machlekes b'shtei tibanis. The reason why we're having a machlekes here doesn't mean machlekes Reb Meir and Reb Yossi about what does he mean when he says the oldest? Does he mean the oldest of the oldest, or the one that's older than the youngest, or the all of that? That's because there's two groups. Aval bekatachas. But let's say there was just one group. He only has one wife, and there's a bunch of daughters. You line them up. Each one is exactly like a little bit higher than the one exactly. So then, Dibri Akol Gedola Mamish. Everyone would agree that when he says the older one, he means the oldest. And Katana, when he says the younger one, he means the youngest. And Emtsoyas, if there's a middle one, then Bishma Karla, that you have to say the name. You have to call her by the name. You can't say older or younger. Changing your derech.
Oh, whoa.
So
The Gemara's down there.
That's Chassidus.
we're only talking about younger than 12 and a half. Because you can't marry off.
Here's the book.
The Gemara's the big book.
Amalei Ravada Bar Masna La Abaya. Ravada Bar Masna says to Abaya Lameata, he asks a question. It says like this. Emtsoyes Shebekat Shniya Tishtari. There's two groups. There's the older group and the younger group. We said, according to Reb Meir, that everyone in the older group is considered married, is usher, right? Is usher because we don't know if they're married. There's sisters there. The younger group, everyone is usher until the youngest. Only the very youngest is mutter, according to Reb Meir, right? He says, but if according to what Abaya just said, Abaya says that if you have one group, so the middle one needs to be called by the name. The middle one is not considered the older one. So why in the youngest group do we say that the middle one is also usher? Now we didn't mention the middle one. We didn't say it, but we said the only one that's mutter is Katana Shebektanis, the very youngest. The fact that we said the very youngest means that the middle one would be Aser. Right? And according to Abaya, the middle one should not be Aser, because in one group, the middle one has to be called by the name. And so Shebekachni Tishtri, let the very youngest be permissible. Not the very youngest, the middle of the younger group be permissible. The Gemara says, there's only two. There's only 4 girls in total. There's the 2 older and the 2 younger. Okay. And it's also logical to say that the Misa, because if there would have been that girl there, the middle girl in the youngest group, so the Im Isa if she's there, Lisnaya, why don't we teach it? We should have taught what's the halacha by that girl. Is she permissible or is she not permissible? Gemara says, okay, so that proves to us that she doesn't exist. There is no middle one, and probably if there is a middle one, then she would be permissible. Yeah. Okay. Well, the time she wouldn't be part of this doubt. The Gemara says, according to your logic that you just said, one second. What about the older group? The older group, you didn't mention anything over there. When there's the oldest, which of course that's the doubt, because he said, I'm marrying the older one. So the oldest is for sure older. Then there's the youngest of the older group, which is also older than the youngest group. But what about the middle one? And the middle one is Aser, because she's older than the one that's younger than her, even in her group, right? She's older than the one that's younger than her. So Miktanila, does it teach that? It doesn't teach that either. So the Gemara says, Hachiyash, 1 second. Hasam Tana Ktana Dida Li Isura. Over there, it says that she has a younger sister that's Aser. So obviously the middle one is going to be Aser as well. Hacha im Isa Deika Nisnaya. But over here, we wouldn't even know, the younger group, we wouldn't know if she's actually considered considered older when she's a middle. I don't know if she's considered, I know she's older than the one that's younger than her, but the one that's younger than her is permissible. So maybe she's also permissible. So that's why that's a real proof that if she was there, if she existed, then it would have said, and therefore our bias could be correct. One thing I have a question over here is that the Gemara is so clear about that the middle one of the older group is going to be Aser, but according to Abaya, the middle one of the older group should have used the name. We're saying no, she's Aser because the one that's younger than her is Aser. For sure, she's Aser. What happened to the name that Abaya said? Abaya says the middle one needs to. Amalei Ravhuna Breder Rav Yeshua L'Rava. Ravhuna Breder Rav Yeshua. He's a student of Rava. He's a friend of. There's another gears here. It's Ravada Bar Masna to Abaya. Anyway, whatever the case is, the same generation, I think. So he says, "Ha Pesach dechikat achas dami upligi." 1 second. Abaya is claiming that in the same group you have to you only have the older one would be the oldest, and the younger one would be the youngest, and in the middle you have to use names. He says, but that doesn't make sense because on Pesach it's all considered like one group. Which means the days of Pesach. When he says until before Pesach, every day is considered before the next day. But you should have to say if it's until one of those specific days, you should have said until the second day of Pesach, until the third day. You can't use the word before, right? You can only, according to this, in one group, the before would only be before the first day. And why is there a machlekes there? Is it before each and every day, or is it before the very end? So Amalei Hasan Balishna Dalma Kamiflagi, he changes the pshat. I didn't say this before. Holding at this information. So before we said that the word before could mean before the first day, it could mean before the second day, before the third day, it can before the very end. All of it is before. However, here he says no, that's not the pshat. One says that the word pnei means before, and enachanami. Pnei means before, it means before, it means only Erev Pesach. Once Pesach starts, the vow is done. Mar Savar, the other opinion holds that until the end of Pesach, he says, so gesund, ad mifnei Pesach, until, not Pnei, until before, ad mifnei means until it's passed over, until it's cleared away. Mifnei means to clear away. Until Pesach is cleared away. So it's not a question of what before means, it's a question of what the word Pnei means. Does it mean before or does it mean cleared away? How do they translate Mifnei?
Until before.
And the next one? Passes. Okay.
Just a question.
Yeah.
If somebody says, I'm marrying one of my daughters,
Right.
I will choose a person later.
Right.
Right? So are all of them not permissible to marry
No,
somebody
because
else?
he said that it was going to be only one of them.
But
Whoever
that
he
one-
chooses would be that one. Yeah, that makes sense.
Isn't there a presumption that you marry your older daughter first? I mean, that's what Lavan said. to
Yeah.
Yaakov, right?
They talk about this, and I don't remember what they say, but maybe that's only Lavan.
Oh, he says,
We don't
we
pop them
don't
like
do
that.
this.
No, but it turns out that we actually do. I think when a younger girl gets married before her older sister, I think she has to ask for permission or something. That's a custom. But yeah.
Change his mind every second.
Uh-huh. Right. Okay. The Mishnah says, "Ha'imar li'isha," if someone tells a woman, "Kiddushin, I married you." He I married, and she says, "Like Kiddushin, you never married me." You hear? They're arguing already. It's for sure married. They're for sure married.
For sure married.
Okay. So, who asir b'kreveseh, v'hi muteres b'krevav. So he claims that he's married to her. So whether he is married to her or he isn't married to her, but he claimed that he's married to her, so he's not allowed to marry her sister because he said he's married to her. So it's called Shavi Nafshei Chatir. They sort of mentioned this yesterday. He creates a prohibition on himself because based on his own words, he's prohibited to whether we believe him or not, but he has to believe himself, right? He has to follow his own words. So he's not allowed to marry her sister or her relative or mother or daughter or whatever. But she is permissible to marry his relatives, his father, his brother, which would have been permitted. But she says, I never married you. I don't know what you're talking about. So it's not like we have witnesses here to say who's right. So it's just his word against her word. So we don't believe any of them. In essence, no one's definitely believed, but there could be a doubt here. But we don't say that she's prohibited him just because he claimed that he married her. Witnesses that we're going to see, the Gemara say the witnesses don't exist. There had to be witnesses, but we're going to see the witnesses don't exist. Yeah. They're not here. They're not available. They don't speak English. No, it's the same person. It's the same person, but it's a different book. The Rabbi Gordon's quoting the reason why Rabbi Gordon quotes the Bal HaTurim. Bal HaTurim means the author of the Torah. He wrote a book on halacha, which is called the Torah, and then he wrote a book on Shulchan Aruch, which didn't get a name. He wrote a book on Chumash, which didn't get a name. So he's called the Bal HaTurim, the author of the Turim. I don't know what happened to the name of his Sefer on Chumash. Why did it end up just getting called the author of some other book?
In litigation.
Yeah, it's in litigation.
It's a long case.
Okay, so it's the same person. His name was Rabbi Yaakov, the Rabbi Yaakov ben Arush, the son of the Rush. Yeah. So, but he's the source of all of the Shulchan Aruch. So anything that's in Shulchan Aruch, any chapter in Shulchan Aruch, that chapter was created by the Torah, and then the Shulchan Aruch just so chapter 1, which is about this, the Torah made that. Chapter 2, which is The Rambam has his own system, and the Torah ignored that system when he made his. The Torah was after that. No, the Torah was before the Shulchan Aruch. One that was written at the same time as the Shulchan Aruch was the Ramah. He started writing, but then he said, "I'll just add notes." The language of the Shulchan Aruch is very similar to the Rambam. The Rambam's language is like is a very easy Hebrew, like Mishnaic Hebrew. So the Shulchan Aruch would use the Rambam's Hebrew, and it's very hard to write like that. It's like very clear writing. No, there's other books from Arabic. There's the Rambam on the Yad HaChazak was in Hebrew. Okay. So someone tells the woman, "You're married to I married you. You're married to me," and she says no. So he's not allowed to marry her relatives, and she is allowed to marry his relatives. Let's say that's the opposite. She says, "You married me." I never married you. This is a manipulative guy. He's allowed to marry her relatives because he never claimed that he's married her. He says, "I never married you." But because she's saying that she's married to him, so at least that she's prohibited to his relatives. Kidashtich, I married you.
It's just everybody,
She should be usher to everyone as well. So why does it say B'Krei? Maybe it means even after they divorce, even after the get, she's still prohibited to his relatives. He still can't marry her ex. She still can't marry her. Maybe that's what it means. But I'm sorry. What was that?
He said manipulated guy. It should be the same for the woman.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that.
You don't say things that are like obvious.
Kidashtich. She says, "I married you." V'hi Aimeres, but she claims, "Like Kidashte Labiti." That wasn't me. That was my daughter.
Whoa.
So, who aser b'kreivis gedayla? He is prohibited to the woman. To the gedayla means to the mother. He's prohibited to the relatives of the mother. Gedayla, but the mother, muteres b'kreivav, is permissible. She claims she's not married, so she's allowed to marry his relatives. Who muter b'kreivis ketana? He never said that he was married to the daughter. That was the mother. So he's allowed to marry the relatives of the daughter, because he never claimed anything about the daughter. Ketana, he can't marry the daughter because he claimed he's married to the mother, but he can marry her relatives, her other relatives. So if there are other relatives, whatever. But Ketana and the daughter, muteris b'kreivav, because she had no say about this, and the mother has no opinion to say. The mother is not believed to say that my daughter was married. It would only be the father that can say I married off my daughter, not the mother. The mother can't say anything. The mother says you married my daughter. That has no effect on the daughter. So the daughter herself can marry his relatives. Kidash diaspitech. Let's say he claims I married your daughter. He like kidash tell I see. You didn't marry my daughter. You married me. Yeah. So who aser b'kreivis ketana? He's not prohibited to the daughter's relatives. Ketana muteres b'kreivav, but the daughter is permissible to him. I didn't even see the daughter in here at all. She didn't have any say over here. But who muter b'kreivis gedayla? He's allowed to marry the relatives of the mother. Gedayla aser b'kreivav, and the mother is prohibited to him because she claims that she's married to. She's prohibited to his relatives because she claims she's married to him. Okay. So, Gemara says, someone tells a woman, "Kidashtich." That's and she says, "You didn't marry me." That's the beginning of our Mishnah. And the Gemara says, "Utsricha." We had a bunch of cases which all seem to be the same. Yeah, he says, she says, they all seem to be the same. So the Gemara says like this: "Diyashmin and gabe dida." If it would only say didei, I have to say. If it would say only regarding him, that he claimed that he's married and she said that she's not married. But it didn't go the other way, where she claims that you married me. It only said he claimed that he married her. He doesn't care if he's going to now be prohibited to her relatives. Maybe he's not saying the truth. So therefore, we trust her to say that she's not married. Because even if it's not true, what's the big deal for him? Big deal for him is that, okay, he won't marry her mother. Okay, whatever. He has the rest of the world to marry. He doesn't need to marry her mother. So the fact that he's making a claim that he's married to her doesn't prove anything. Aval ihi, but when she claims that she is married to him, the kimlal b'dibure, if it wasn't accurate, so loyhavis amra v'litzariya, then she would never have said that to make herself prohibited to his relatives. Now, I think what it really means is to the rest of the world.
You mentioned before that, like, maybe she wouldn't want to be known, so she would
Right.
with the male.
Yeah,
the male
now
would say
that was when she claims she doesn't remember who she married. But here we're saying that she's married to this guy. She's now becoming prohibited to his relatives. Now we think that we should trust her so much. We could have thought that we should trust her so much that he should also be prohibited to her, even though he claims he's not married. He should be prohibited to her relatives. Obviously, she's saying the truth, because or else she never would have said that she's married to him. Now, the Gemara doesn't say that she's getting prohibited to the whole world. But it says Krevisel. What do you have in the notes? Why would we believe her more than him?
So some commentaries maintain that this refers specifically to a father as well. Logic of this claim is that as the sages have the mother, the authority to marry her off, and such a does not apply to wives as well.
Let me see the comment. Since her claim that he betrothed her renders her forbidden to everyone else, it is likely that it is true. And therefore, one might think that he should also be forbidden to her else. I read it wrong. It goes like this. It's likely to be true because she's prohibited to everyone. Velitzer ihu. I have to put a comma there. Leihavis amra, comma. Velitzer ihu b'krevesah, and he should be prohibited to her relatives. And he should be prohibited to her relatives, right? Because she's getting prohibited to the whole world. So obviously she's saying the truth. So he should be prohibited. Okay, that's good. He says, I married you. And she says, no, you married my daughter. You didn't marry me. What do we need this case for? You already told me that we don't trust her. And it's basically the same thing getting repeated. It says it is necessary. I could have thought that biblically the father's always believed to say about his daughter if he married her off. But rabbinically we should say that the mother is believed about the daughter. And the daughter should be prohibited to his relatives because the mother claims that she's married, that the daughter's married to him. So Kamash Malan, that we don't trust the mother at all, not even rabbinically. Kidashti espitech. Okay, then we're entering into a new sugi. We'll see how far we get. What time is Shachar? 38? 38. Okay, we'll go a little further. Kidashti espitech chulu. Says, I married your daughter, and she says, no, you married me. Hasu lamli, what do I need this for? The Gemara says, you're right. I did Tanaha, Taninamiha. You don't need that case. You already got everything every Chiddush here. The only thing is we're making it symmetrical, so we added in this last case to match you're doing it to the first case, you see if we added that in. But the only Chiddush over here was that the mother's not believed that the daughter's married. Okay, Itzmar. Now we have a statement. Rav Amar Kaifin. Rav says that in these cases, we force the fellow to give a get. Shmuel Amar Mevakshin. Shmuel said we don't force, we just request. Gemara says, hey. Where are you saying this on? Which case? Ilay Ma'aresha. Are you talking about the very first case where he says, I married you, and she says no? So then he has to give her, Rab would say, we force her to give a get. Lav kaifanika v'lei mavakshinika. There shouldn't be forcing and there shouldn't be requesting. Now, the explanation for this is,
We force her to accept again.
would be
Him
both.
to give it.
Both, we force him to give again. She doesn't, according to Rabbeinu Gershon, we can always throw the get at her.
But she's in the past, she's going to become a grusha.
So that's the problem. The problem is that she is permissible to his relatives. Why do we have to do that to her? Well, how could we create a prohibition on her just because of his claim? That's not right. He's basically making her prohibited to his brother. It's a way of getting her not to marry his brother. He comes over, he says, I married you. And she says, no, it's his word against her word. And then the brother can't marry her. This would be a terrible. People could, manipulate their brothers' marriages.
So what do they
That's not right. So the Gemara says you can't do that. Ela Seifa, so it must be on another case. It must be on the later case. What's the Seifa? When she says, she's the one that says, you married me. And now we're forcing him to give her a get. The Gemara says, Bishleim Mavakshin. He gets why we say we request that he give her a get. You see, there's no difference to the man, really, if he's a divorced man or not. Doesn't matter to him. No, there is one difference, that if he divorced her, he can't marry her relatives. You say we can request because she wants to marry someone else and you don't want to l'chaye elakaifen, but to force him to give the get, amai. Amar leinichali ditzabekreve. 1 second, I wanted to marry your sister. If I'm going to give her a get, now I can't marry the sister. How could Rav say that we forced? Rather, the statements were said together. Amar Shmuel mavakshin mimeno litin get. Shmuel says that we request that he gives a get, because it would benefit the woman if she's divorced, because he's claiming he's not married to her. She says she is, so it would be a good thing for him to do. However, we request that, we don't force it. Amar Rav, and Rav says, and if he gave a get, then he has to give a ksuba on his own. If he gave a get on his own, he has to give a ksuba.
Can he marry his sister and then?
That would be interesting. Sounds
Because
like
we
a
trusted
possibility. Sounds like a possibility.
Are you saying, Rabbi,
Tivia's
what?
suggesting- Yeah. I'm sorry?
Did it before.
No, I'm saying, so what if he would have married her, given her a get, he would not be able to then marry the sister? I mean, not married her. If she claimed that, I wasn't married, she claims I wasn't married to you. So he says, okay, here's a get. He wouldn't be able to marry the sister?
No, because he claimed that he was married. So once he claims that he's married to her, then he becomes automatically prohibited to all her relatives based on his own claim. If she says that you married me and he says, no, I never married you. So if he gives her a get, then she becomes a Garusha and the sister becomes prohibited. When he admits to that by giving the get, he becomes prohibited to the sister. So that's why we don't want to say that we force him to give a get, because then it rules out the sister that maybe he wanted to marry.
If there's a ksuba, wouldn't it prove that they were actually married?
No, the ksuba doesn't mean a document. Ksuba means that he owes the money to the ksuba. The
Wouldn't that be
debtor.
on paper?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Yeah, Tuvia was suggesting that maybe he should marry the sister if he wanted to, and then give the get later. The reason why the Gemara is not suggesting that is because it could be that the sister's too young, and the woman, when he wants to get married now, she's 36, and the sister's only 12. Something like maybe it's not matching up perfectly.
There's a way or another way.
Right, and what did you say? Hello, what were you just saying?
I thought that ksuba maybe.
Oh, yeah. So the ksuba being on paper is not necessarily there. The ksuba is today we have a ksuba on paper, but those days there was a discussion. Do you need a paper of ksuba? Okay, so I guess we'll leave it over here.
How do you spell Garusha?
Going,
Always on the pit.
always keep going.
One second, I need to read one more line so I don't have to start this again. It's the same thing again. I'm just gonna repeat one line. It's Manami Amarvacha Barada Amarav, Avamil Amaravacha Barada Amarav, Amnuna Amarav, Kaifin Mavakshin Tarti. We force and we request two things. Hachikamar, Kaifin Mavakshin. Tarti, the Gemara asks. Hachikamar, this is what it means. Mavakshin Menolitin get. Nothing else. Kaifin Menolitin Suba. That would be the end of the Gemara. We
So the
ask him to
is
give
for the ksuba.
the kaifin is on the payment of the ksuba if he gave again. Okay, then we'll leave it here.
It's a big mess.
Oh, yeah.